Luke Duffy. He is site editor at Fansided's Valley of the Suns. Had a great chat with him about the Suns' off-season, the trio of Devin Booker, Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal, and how that will fare this season. And of course, a big preview to opening night, the Suns meeting the Warriors at Chase Center. Looking forward to it, so enjoy this episode, and thanks again to Luke for coming on. Alrighty, welcome Luke. It's crazy to me that I am an Australian and I'm now speaking with an Irishman about NBA basketball. It is quite amazing, but just before we get into Warriors Suns preview, give me a little bit of a background into your pathway as an NBA fan to the point of now being site editor at Valley of the Suns.
Okay, I'll keep this as short and as sweet as I can because I could talk about it for days. But basically, in the early 2000s, my auntie and uncle lived in New York, and I went over to visit them one summer. And I don't know why, because they're not basketball fans. They brought me to the NBA store and they sort of said, okay, you can have a jersey. And bearing in mind, I knew nothing about any team. I picked, and I don't know why to this day, a Mike Bibby Sacramento Kings jersey, purple jersey. Loved it, fell in love with it. Have seen the pictures of me since. It didn't look great on me now, I have to be honest. My mum probably should have pulled me aside and said it wasn't really suiting the Irish winters, but however. So from there, I kind of fell in love with it. It was harder back then to kind of keep up to date with what was going on, so it kind of drifted for a year or two. But I remember the NBA Live with Carmelo Anthony on the front. I think it was 04, 03 or 04, probably 04. And I didn't have a clue about the rules, was annoyed when I'd steal to try and get the ball and foul out, didn't understand 8-second violations, all of that stuff. But over time, I wanted to learn more. So I did. I kept at it through the games originally. And then when I kind of got back into it properly, Dwight Howard had just been drafted by the Magic. And there was something about his personality that I was drawn towards. So I've been a Magic fan. Don't tell the Valley of the Suns people this, but I guess I'm a Magic fan, or have been, because of that. So I always keep an eye on them. But that's where it came from, really. And my love for the game, to the point now where I coach a women's basketball team, first season doing it, 2-1 so far. Not that your listeners will be wondering that, but we're 2-1, hoping to make the playoffs. And yeah, write about Suns every day as much as I can. I just love it. I'm obsessed.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story, and like all of us that aren't American, we all have a different story on how we started to get into the game, and obviously basketball itself is just going worldwide now, so it's absolutely fantastic and a really cool story that you've just shared there. Let's get on to Suns Warriors season opener. First of all, what time will it be over there? Because I know for me it starts at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, so it's perfect timing. What time will that actually get underway?
Very envious of you, Peter. So it'll be about 3 or 3:30 a.m. So what I tried to do is, I have league pass, of course. I will stay up for that one. My girlfriend might not know that yet, but I will. Even if I can get the first half or 3/4, I might sleep for a bit, and then generally what I do is the commute to work the next day on my phone, watch the end of the game. Sometimes I'm up so early and the games on the West Coast are on so late, I actually catch them live as well, like the second half live. So yeah, it's a struggle. I envy you, man, because it's hard to keep up to date, especially with the West Coast teams, but I love it as well, so I wouldn't change it for anything.
Absolutely. Fantastic. All right, let's talk about some Suns basketball over the offseason. Now, the most recent thing, and possibly the biggest thing from a Warrior fan perspective and just general NBA fans outside of Phoenix, the recent DeAndre Ayton trade, where he's the major centerpiece going out, Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, a couple other players coming in. What's the general consensus among Suns fans, first when the trade went down, and of course, since with preseason starting and finishing, how Nurkic and Allen and the other pieces have fit in, and how that has, I suppose, changed the perception around the trade?
In a word, meh. Certainly at the start, when I saw it was breaking, I kind of went, really? Is that what we're getting for DeAndre Ayton? But then I also think, as fans of any team, or not even fans, like just you follow a team, you write about a team. I'm not saying we all overemphasize or overhype the abilities of the players that we watch all the time, but the reality is his value around the league isn't what Suns fans thought that it was. Do I think this is the best they were going to get from in that moment? Yes. I don't think they could wait any longer. I think it was a good thing that he wasn't at media day, just because it was all dealt with and the organization rather could move on. So again, underwhelming when you look at what was gotten in return. I think Keon Johnson was only waived this morning for myself, bringing the roster down to 15, so he's not even there anymore. So yeah, look, not great in the moment. That was the general feeling. Was really now. Since then, we can't read too much into preseason, even though we all try to. Slightly better, marginally better. I think Grayson Allen's definitely, if not the fifth starter, we'll probably get into who the fifth starter will be later on. He's definitely like players 4 through 8 or 5 through 8, excuse me, in the rotation for sure. And Nurkic, I'm not sold on him. I just think he's too injury prone. He's 29 years old, hasn't played more than 52 games, I don't believe, since the pre-COVID season. Yeah, I'm just not sold on him. I don't think he'll be there for the full stretcher when it really matters. And I think that opens up larger questions as to the depth and KD playing the 5. So that's a problem for me personally.
Yeah, I'm not a Nurkic fan at all, and I was quite surprised when the trade went down. I would have thought that with Monty Williams going out and Frank Vogel coming in, obviously as coach, that they might have given a period there where Ayton could play under Vogel, who's more of a defensive-minded coach, and to see how that may pan out, and then maybe 2 or 3 months down the track, if things weren't working out, then maybe you could look at trading Ayton. And I don't think like the kind of value you got for him now, I would have thought still would have been there in 2 or 3 months' time, kind of thing. So I'm surprised that the trigger was pulled, kind of thing, on that move. Like, do you think his value would have gone down to a point where like what you got now wouldn't, the kind of value you got now wouldn't have been there in 2 or 3 months?
You're right. I think it would have been, but I also think, and it's taken me a while to come around to this because Vogel said everything both when he was unveiled earlier in the offseason and leading up to before the trade. He said all the right things about working with Ayton defensively, turning him into an all-star, certainly close to an all-star level player, which I suppose the numbers would suggest he kind of has been even before then. So, like, while I agree with you, I do also think it was just time for him to go. Like the margins are so small with this team. Like Durant's 35. I know that this deal was probably available in 3 months or something very similar to it. But is it not just better to get him out the door and start this season with what they have now? Obviously, if he sits for 50, 60 games and the Suns have a fifth or sixth seed, like revisionist history or revisionists will look back and go, that was the wrong move. But I do get why they did it. And again, it took me a little while to get to that point because I still don't love the return at all.
Yeah. Like I'm surprised at the trade they did make, but obviously I don't think anyone is surprised at the fact DeAndre Ayton is no longer there. I was in your position as site editor of Valley of the Suns last off-season and into training camp and media day, and that media day was an absolute disaster. You have DeAndre Ayton and Monty Williams, the relationship there, and them coming out. I'm not sure who exactly said it, which one of the two actually said it, but saying that there hadn't been any communication throughout the whole off-season, which, 3-4
I don't want to
months.
blame Ayton on that. I believe it was Ayton, but don't quote me on that now because I may be incorrect on that. But yes, and it was great to see. And not that we're going to talk about media day, but like, and not to use a word like the vibes, but like the feel around the team on media day. I mean, like Devin Booker just looks like a man in control of his kingdom. It's his team. Everyone knows that. And without the distraction of Ayton, everyone is clearly on the same page. And it just felt right and it felt great. Again, easy to say that now before a game's been played, but it all felt right. And it all felt like the thing to do in the moment, but we'll see.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, put simply, it's addition by subtraction. So even if, you don't quite get the value back that you would have liked to have gotten out of Ayton, just getting him out of there might be the best thing for the team. And it's almost a similar kind of thing with the Warriors and the whole Jordan Poole, Draymond Green situation. And, I'm sure the Warriors would have liked to have got more for Jordan Poole, but at the end of the day, the whole dynamic between him and Draymond Green was just simply not tenable anymore. And so to move him on, Chris Paul will obviously talk about. In fact, let's get into that now because obviously before the whole Poole thing happened with the Poole trade happened with the Warriors, of course you had to have Chris Paul traded from Phoenix to Washington for Bradley Beal. So how is that trade kind of looking? Because I think most people at the time thought that it was a major upgrade for Washington. How has Beal looked in preseason to date? And I suppose the big thing for Warrior fans and other NBA fans looking at Phoenix is how can the trio of Devin Booker, KD hold up defensively, or is this just going to be a case of that trio being so potent offensively that they're just going to outscore teams on a nightly basis?
Well, starting with Beal, who hasn't played in every preseason game, he's certainly said and done all of the right things, be it off the court in terms of, yes, I'm the third option. I've never played with people of this caliber before. Like, don't forget, he's averaged 30 points a season twice in his career with the Wizards. I mean, to have that as your third offensive option each night, assuming obviously health, is amazing. And the fact that he's also cool with it, it's not like he comes in and believes, well, hold on now, this is my team, or I've been traded because like I'm what you need to get over the hump. And I actually do think if they are going to win a championship, that trade will be what we look back on as the moment when it happened. But he knows his role, and in preseason, again, it's hard to get a feel. I more look for it's not about the results, it is about just the overall fit and how people playing rotations and stuff like that. He's fit in such a way, like, not just, it sounds cliche, doesn't it? But he's fit in such a way, not a thing has been forced. He takes what defenders give him. He's absolutely fine deferring to Booker or Durant on possessions. He's, to move on and tend to the defending question, he's not, is he an above average defender? I mean, maybe, but I mean, maybe that's being kind as well. I do think, though, Booker and Durant are better defenders than they're given credit for, to the point where like Durant can be elite on that end for stretches. You just don't want them to be. Certainly you don't want them to be in November in Charlotte. You don't want to have Devin Booker for 40 minutes playing like a lot of defending or doing a lot of defending. So they are going to have to outscore a lot of teams, yes. Do I think when it comes down to it, they'll be able to get stops? Maybe a little bit more than we think. Now, obviously the Nuggets had great success against them last season, and come the playoffs, it's a whole different story. But I do think defensively, they might surprise a few people. Now, league average, maybe, but I do think they'll surprise a few people. And I think Beal is a part of that. And I do think he will buy in on that end as well.
I think he averaged over a block a game in his time with the Warriors.
But you don't want that. And that's like with Nurkic, you don't like, if Nurkic is injured, then KD probably has to play more minutes at the five, because we're probably not going to spend a lot of time on the likes of Ball or Drew Eubanks. But I don't know that they're the solution to winning a championship on the defensive end. But like, you don't want a 35-year-old Kevin Durant to be in the paint. At least I don't want a 35-year-old Kevin Durant in there banging with bigs each night. I just don't. In limited minutes, yes. And I do think KD at the five in certain lineups offensively can be incredible. I think there's a chance that like they're outscoring opponents by massive numbers. But that's not quite the death lineup with the Warriors we saw in the past. Maybe not that good now.
Obviously in the offseason, so you lose Chris Paul, bring Bradley Beal in, but you also lose Cam Payne. So there's really not much in the way of primary point guard ball handling there. In my time covering the Suns, I was always looking at the ball handling, playmaking abilities of Devin Booker, and I think he's developed from out-and-out scorer early in his career to a really good playmaker, and his ability to bring others into the game, I think, has developed to a point where I think he can be an MVP candidate this season. How many assists do you think he can average this season? And is there any backup option in terms of point guard play for the Suns?
Well, we've gone back to Booker as an MVP. That's probably one of my hotter takes as well. I think Booker can win the MVP this year. We'll probably come back to that. I looked, if I'm not mistaken, Booker has averaged over 6 assists twice in his career so far. 6.7, I think, is the highest, which actually surprised me. I didn't think it was that high. So, I mean, I think he's capable of more than that, and I think he could get to 8 this season, definitely, because he is going to be the primary ball handler. Although, if I hear the phrase "point Booker" one more time, I feel like it's a phrase we're going to hear many, many times over the course of the season. Like, I'm comfortable when he has the ball in his hands. I think, like, he's a fantastic passer. He's a great playmaker. He really can do it all. My only concern is last season in the playoffs, it was 33.7 points per game. He had the most points in the postseason. If you have him playmaking that bit more, is he going to look for his own shot less when he's so good at scoring the ball? Like, he does it like few other people in the league. So that worries me a little bit. Again, it's a good problem to have, but it does still worry me. And like, beyond him, you're right, Jordan Goodwin and Saben Lee are the two backups currently. Saben Lee actually in the preseason has impressed me as much as anyone in terms of taking his opportunity. But like, if Jordan Goodwin and Saben Lee are your depth chart behind Devin Booker to win a championship, I'd be worried. And Cam Payne, who's obviously a very divisive figure with some fans, there were some who were happy to see him go and couldn't understand why Bucks fans were happy to get him in the first place. And then there are those who wanted him to stay because he's been one of, or was at least on a few occasions in Suns playoff games, one of the players who actually turned up. So, that's harder than you think to replace. But all in all, I would say Booker averaging over 8 assists a game this season, definitely realistic.
Yeah, like I remember writing in the past about Booker developing into a Harden type player. Now, I think he can be more efficient than Harden. I think he can have more team success than Harden. But like Harden was also on that Houston team that, probably win a championship or two, if not for, that prime Warriors years between, 2017 or in 2017 and 2018 kind of thing. So Harden was an MVP player at the end of the day, and I think that's where Booker can get to. Let's get into the opener again. Suns Warriors. The fifth starter for me is an interesting one because I'm not sure too many fans would be too locked into who necessarily is going to be the Suns' fifth starter next to Book, KD, Beal, Nurkic. Is it Grayson Allen? And if so, what kind of hold has he got that on that position?
For now, I actually think this spot is Josh Okogie's to lose. And I do think he ultimately will lose it. Sorry, Josh, if you're listening. I do think he ultimately will lose it, but the continuity and the fact he's a known quantity is both a positive and a negative to me. He's played with Booker before, hasn't really played with Durant, in fairness. He's a willing defender. He's an above average defender. He's kind of like what Torrey Craig was to the team at one point in time. And I think for what the team has right now, it works, or it will work. Or, in my mind, it will work. That being said, Grayson Allen is going to push him hard for that spot. And if after 15 games he's taken that position, I won't be even slightly surprised. But I do also think he works excellently as a six-man, Grayson Allen. I think him and Yuta Watanabe are the two. Not that that's what you asked me, but I think that both of them are excellent six men. So I think it's Josh Okogie's to begin with, and it will be against the Warriors. But Grayson Allen will come for that spot and ultimately get it.
Yeah, I was actually really impressed with Okogie last season because I remember writing about him once the Suns picked him up last offseason, and I thought there was a little bit of an overlap between the skill sets between he and Torrey Craig, and I didn't think both of them would be able to work in Phoenix as defensive-minded guys who are questionable three-point shooters. But Okogie actually shot the ball better than I expected. I'm not sure, you might know what he ended up shooting, but I'm sure it was a career high. And he ultimately worked, and now he's probably going to have more responsibility with Craig no longer there. Obviously, I think most of us were impressed with how Phoenix were able to round out the roster in free agency with their limited capacity to be able to do so. Who is most likely to impact, this season? Is it Eric Gordon, who I know the Warriors had interest in before he went to the Suns? Is there anyone else?
Well, with Eric Gordon, for me, it was one of those. I'm glad the Warriors didn't get him, if you know what I mean. Like, he's the exact player I don't want to see against the Suns. So that's not why they picked him up, just so another contender couldn't get him. But I'm very happy he's with the Suns and not with the Warriors or the Nuggets or whoever it may have been. I also think with Eric Gordon, like, again, I think he's 35 as well. Not that that's, I'm getting up there myself. That's not a bad thing. But like, I don't know if you want to overly rely on just him when it comes to the playoffs. So the person I'm going for is Yuta Watanabe. I'd actually written the day before free agency started, or 2 days before, how he was the perfect get for the Suns. They just wouldn't be able to afford him. And then for him to actually end up on the Suns was amazing. He shot 44.4% from deep last season. He, at one point in time, was leading the league in corner three-pointers made. He's played with Durant. He's taller than, not that you might think, but like, he's tall. He's not the best defender in the world, but I think he's capable of at least staying in front of some, if not all, players. Quicker guards will get around them, of course. Players will shoot over him, but he's not a complete liability out there defensively. So I think he's the player, when it's all said and done, we'll look back on this season and go, well, like, what a great pickup he was. And he's actually there for 2 years. His was a 2-year deal. There's a lot of 1-year deals. So
yeah,
it's
he
great
was
that he's in
fantastic
for
with
what I hope
Brooklyn
will be a
last
2-year
season.
stretch, because I think he can do a lot of good for the team, definitely.
Revelation really kind of came from nowhere as one of the best three-point shooters in the league. Which player throughout the Suns preseason has impressed you the most outside of the star players?
I don't know if this is too niche or I'm trying to be too, too hipstery here, but Saban Lee, like anytime I've seen him on the court, hasn't always had great games in terms of plus minus or points or anything like that. Although there was a couple where he was okay, but every time I see him, I'm impressed. I'm not saying he's the reason you're able to get rid of campaign. I think the trade exception that they opened up was the reason they did that. But he's solid. He's got fight to him. He's not wasting, like, again, it's preseason and like he's playing with a bit of a chip on his shoulder. So I've been impressed with him, and I don't know that I want the ball in his hands next April, May, June. But I'm be comfortable 5, 10 minutes of a regular season game if he's running the show. I think they'll be okay. Granted, it's because he'll have stars around them, but like I think he'll be okay. So yeah, I've been impressed with Saban Lee, and I think he'll probably get a few more minutes than people realize. I know he's still probably third choice behind Jordan Goodwin in terms of point guard, if Booker is the point guard. But yeah, I like Saban Lee.
So let's look specifically at Tuesday night's game, American time, 3 a.m. in the morning for you, Wednesday afternoon for me, whatever it may be. What aspect do you think the Suns will look to exploit the Warriors in obviously trying to get a win in this one?
Well, the Warriors had the fastest pace in the league last season, at least during the regular season. And they were around league average defensively. I think it was
Okay.
14th or 15th. The rating was about 113.4, thereabouts. So I think when CP3 is out there, the pace, and again, we'd know this from watching the Suns, when CP3 is out there, the pace goes down a little bit. And I think that can be to the Suns' advantage if it's a slower game. Not that, I mean, I could ask you if you think that Chris Paul will start. I mean, I don't think he will personally, but I mean, that the minutes he's out there, it will be a slower game. And I think the Warriors, again, defensively are there to be gotten at. I'm not going to say it's payback's the wrong word, or like full circle, but like, again, the Warriors with Kevin Durant were an impossible puzzle for people to solve. I wouldn't quite put the Suns on that level yet because they haven't won anything. But on paper, offensively, they're a very tough problem to solve. Steph Curry is a very good defender, certainly for his height. I still think he can be gotten at, and I think that's what the Suns. He's not the only person they'll target, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for them to control all of where the Suns can hurt you from.
Going to your question of who you think will start for the Warriors, the question of who I think will start and who I want to start are two different questions altogether. So Draymond is questionable at the moment at this time of recording for this one. So he ramped up into 5-on-5 practice earlier today. So even if he does play, I would assume that he would probably come off the bench. He'll probably be limited to 20, maximum 25 minutes. I'd probably say closer to 20 minutes. So I do think Chris Paul will start. I think their last preseason game against the Spurs on Friday night, they went back to their starting lineup of Chris Paul, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Kevon Looney. I've spoken extensively with Jonathan Kuminga being the most impressive of the Warriors players over preseason. I think he should be starting over Chris Paul. We saw him start in the game against Sacramento on Wednesday, I believe it was, American time, Wednesday night. He started, as did Trace Jackson-Davis, although Kevon Looney was out sick. So, yes, the final answer is I think Chris Paul will start. I would prefer Jonathan Kuminga, though, especially with going up against a Suns team where, as you say, I think if this is a half-court battle, I think the Suns are much more well-equipped to get the job done. You've got the shot-making of Beal, Booker, KD. I think that trumps anything the Warriors can do. Obviously, Steph is an offense to himself, and he can probably light anyone up and win any given game for Golden State. But Andrew Wiggins, I've been big on him over the offseason. Can he get into some more self-isolation creation? We'll wait and see. Klay has been flat out horrific in preseason. He's a big concern for Warrior fans. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot of Warrior fans that are very optimistic that, hey, he's one of the greatest shooters of all time. He'll come good. But we've got to wait and see that happen. And obviously, the playmaking element of, Draymond not being there or being there in a limited capacity will hurt, and maybe that's why Chris Paul will ultimately start. But I think the size and the defensive capacity that Jonathan Kuminga can give you is probably more needed, I think, in regards to trying to, because like you could throw Kuminga on KD for possessions here or there, and he could battle potentially. Like I'm not saying he's going to stop KD in any way, shape, or form, but he's going to be much better equipped to do so than a 3-guard lineup, because ultimately, if Draymond's coming off the bench, I'm actually trying to work out who's guarding KD. It's probably Clay, maybe. I'm trying to work it. Like Wiggins, I assume will probably take Booker. That leaves Steph on Beal, I would say. Chris Paul on Okogie. Clay on KD. Like that would scare you if you're a Warrior fan, which is why I would have Chris Paul coming off the bench and I would have Kuminga starting. So we'll wait and see what happens. But Steve Kerr, I think, loves his veteran players, his high IQ players, and that's what Chris Paul gives him over Kuminga, that is for sure. What area concerns you from a Suns perspective, coming up against the Warriors?
I still, and obviously we've just played it out here, and it's actually really interesting to hear another team's perspective, because as you just say, who's going to guard KD, and God, maybe it's Klay Thompson. You think to yourself, God, the Suns really do have a chance here to be, special offensively, because the Warriors are a very good team, and they're going to struggle at times to contain the Suns' top 3 players. So that's, I suppose, very positive news for Suns fans to hear. But where I think they'll struggle is, I still don't know. You've rightly said Clay has struggled in preseason, but when Clay and Steph are on it, there's nobody in the league who can stop them. And that's the moment we'll see if Bradley Beal is talking about, getting back and working hard defensively and being the third option. It's quite another thing for Devin Booker to say, okay, well, you chase Steph Curry for a few possessions, or you just stick to Klay Thompson if you can. I know Klay Thompson's quite a big body. So that will be interesting, because Booker probably isn't going to do that all the time. Durant certainly isn't. So it'll be on Beal to be more of a two-way player, more than he's ever been in his career. And okay, Okogie's out there as well, and Grayson Allen maybe, but Steph and Clay aren't going to be too worried about Okogie or Grayson Allen, or even really Beal, nor should they be. So that's the first concern. And had Draymond been fit, or if he is to play any part, he's exactly what you don't want to come up against if you're the Suns. He's physical, he's aggressive, he just does all of the things that I think the Suns currently, I don't want to say a soft underbelly, because that might be a bit harsh on the Suns. We haven't seen them play yet, but Draymond Green is the exact type of player you don't want to see, especially on opening night as well. You're probably going to ask me soon the final score predictions and stuff like that, but yeah, he's exactly who you don't want to see on opening night for sure. So hopefully he doesn't play from a Suns perspective.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be big for the Warriors. I think we can cover him to an extent with Kuminga, Dario Saric, who Suns fans would know all about, who's been excellent for the Warriors so far in preseason. Even a rookie, Trace Jackson-Davis, who's 23, 4 years of college, he looked pretty good in preseason, looked like he could play a role, albeit limited, straight away. But for this specific matchup against the Suns, I think the Warriors really do need Draymond, just because of the defense that he can provide. He can be probably the primary option to guard KD, and the potency that the Suns provide you with that trio. If Draymond's not there, then I'd find it hard to see the Warriors limiting the Suns to less than 120 points, if I'm being honest. So, again, it's a wait and see with Draymond. I'm sure they're not going to push him out there just for the sake of it. He will need to be 100%. He'll need to be in a capacity where he can play a decent role, where he can play his 15, 20 minutes at a high intensity, high energy. So we'll just wait and see.
Obviously, you've got the dynamic with Chris Paul coming up against his former team for the first time, but you've also got Kevin Durant, who, despite having left the Warriors over 4 years ago, now comes up against them at Chase Center in front of fans for the first time. How do you think fans will respond to KD and the general reception that he'll get?
So, look, I think he should it should be applause right across the board for Durant, although I'll ask you a follow-up question now shortly as to what you think or something like that. But, I mean, look, he helped them win 2 titles. He was finals MVP twice. He was part of the greatest team ever. And I think ultimately he just wanted to get out of Steph Curry's shadow. because he could have won 10 titles with the Warriors. It's still Steph Curry's team, still Steph Curry's city. And I mean, someone like a James Harden has asked to move teams, I think, about 15 times since Durant went to Brooklyn. So I don't see why he should be treated any differently. But I mean, in the years since he's moved firstly to Brooklyn, stars asking and now asking to go to specific places has become much more common. So I think it should be widespread applause. Although I was going to ask you, do you think, I remember when DeMar DeRozan left the Raptors, which is granted a little bit different. He got like a timeout, he got the video treatment, he nearly cried, and he deserved all of that. Does Kevin Durant deserve like a montage video, and will he get one?
I think he should get a montage. I think he should get a standing ovation, whatever it may be. Like, was there a little bit of bitterness when he left for the Nets in 2019 free agency? Maybe a little bit, but I think everyone, Warrior fans, other NBA fans, knew from early in that 2018-2019 season that he was gone out of there, particularly after the spat with Draymond in that Clippers game, which was somewhat early in the season. So really, from that point, it was about whether he could join together with his teammates to win a third straight championship. And I honestly think that would have happened if he hadn't have got injured, and even maybe if Clay hadn't have got injured either. So to me, I will always appreciate Kevin Durant for what he brought to the Warriors and specifically what he left the Warriors with. So the first thing, I just want to give him a shout out for actually coming back in Game 5 of the 2019 NBA Finals. He could have easily just said, no, my calf's no good and I don't want to play, knowing full well that he had free agency coming up where he was wanting to get a bag, and he was probably going to leave the Warriors. So I'll always appreciate the fact he put his body on the line for 9 minutes in Game 5 of the 2019 NBA Finals. And he played really well in those 9 minutes, to the point where if he doesn't play those 9 minutes, the Warriors probably don't win that game and don't force a Game 6. Ends up tearing his Achilles, absolute disaster. But I will always, looking back at that game, it almost makes me genuinely emotional, the fact that he put his body on the line knowing that he probably wasn't 100%. And we got 9 minutes out of him, and it was a good 9 minutes. And then, unfortunately, he goes down with the torn Achilles, and it sucked. But I think every Warrior fan should appreciate him for that moment just as much, almost, as the 2 championships that he brought. And also the fact that in that 2019 offseason, he leaves the Warriors in a sign and trade. And the Warriors get back D'Angelo Russell and end up moving him, obviously, for Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga. So what you'll see in this season opener is Kevin Durant on the Suns, obviously, but then you've got Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga, who are basically, I don't know how you describe them, they're almost like remnants of KD, because you can link them back to KD leaving the franchise. And obviously Wiggs is a player who was the second best player on a championship team in 2022 for the Warriors. And Jonathan Kuminga is a highly talented two-way player who the Warriors will be hoping is a part of their franchise for years moving forward and can develop into one of the best players on the team. So there's still like remnants of KD at the Warriors, even though it's legitimately been over 4 years now since he left. All right, we'll finish it up there. Final score prediction from you. Anything else for the game, and maybe like a hot take of something that might happen?
So I've zigzagged on the score because there's a world where, I mean, the Warriors are at home to open the season. Durant's back. The Warriors win. Will not surprise me in the slightest. And even at that, again, I think the Suns go to the Lakers after that. I can see the season starting 0-2 and people just writing them off immediately. But I can't in good conscience go against them here. So I do think, you said earlier on, you think they could score over 120. I think they'll win 122, 118. Very close. In terms of hot takes, Booker is the best player on the court, and it isn't even close. Like, he's undoubtedly the best player on the court. Is CP3 getting absolutely cooked constantly? Is that a hot take? I mean, he's nearly 40, but I think every time he's defending anyone, he gets cooked. I don't know, is that hot enough? Or what about the Suns bench outscoring the Warriors bench 3-1?
I think they are all
I don't know if any of those are hot enough for you.
I think Warrior fans
what I came up with
would be quite disappointed with the Booker comment being the clear best player on the court. I think they'll look at Steph Curry and think, We might have the best player out there, but
Yes.
it'll be a fascinating battle, that's
I
for sure.
thought it might be.
The hottest one might be the bench one. The Warrior bench is probably the biggest difference between this season and last season. When you've got, whether he's starting or not, Chris Paul will be running the second unit, and when you've got Kuminga, Saric as well, who that trio's kind of worked really well in preseason. This Warrior bench should be much improved from there. I think they were 17th in net rating last season. I think there's a genuine chance that they're top 10 this season with what they've got there now. So I think that outscoring them 3-1, I think, is quite a hot take. I'm not even sure if I've got any hot takes. My final score prediction, and I suppose this is part of my hot take as well. My hot take is this game will come down to the final possession. So either way, either the Warriors or the Suns will have a shot at the end of the game on the final possession to win it. I'm gonna say that the Warriors win it 121 to the Suns 120, and that the Suns have a shot on the final possession. Not sure what'll happen. Who takes the final shot?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask me this because I feel there's only wrong answers. You're only going to upset people. If you ask me right now with a game on the line who I'd want with the ball in their hands, it is still Kevin Durant.
Yeah,
it is.
I would say KD.
For me, it's KD.
Just
but
to go off
it
topic
might just be Booker.
There was
I don't
know if you saw in the general manager survey, but the general managers were asked about who in the league they would most like to take the final shot, and Steph Curry led the voting there, which I think even Warrior fans were probably a little bit surprised with. Now, I think Steph gets a little bit of a wrong reputation, I think, as a guy that may choke in the big moments. He's had plenty of clutch moments. We saw one on Wednesday against the Sacramento Kings when he scored 16 points in the final 5 minutes and hit the go-ahead three-pointer with 5 seconds remaining. So he is a clutch player, but at the end of the day, he is a 6'3" guard, and I think there's plenty of players that I would prefer to take the final shot. And I remember I did speak to a mate about it in the aftermath of that, and we both said, I still think Kevin Durant might be the guy in the entire league who you most want. Alrighty, we'll finish it up there. Luke, thank you very much for joining me. Is there anything else you wanted to add in terms of the season opener or anything you'd like to plug personally?
I think you just said Steph Curry was clutching a preseason game, so I don't know if you can be clutching a preseason game. I might have to push back on that. But other than that, man, no, not at all. I look forward to the season. I think Suns and Warriors are both going to be right there. I think Nuggets are still probably going to lead the West. And if you want to come and disagree, give out to me. Tell me I'm awful at what I do. Please do so on Twitter at Luca Lockhart, which is a strange name, I know, but you'll get me there. And Valley of the Suns as well, where please check us out because every day, constantly putting stuff out. Great group of writers there. And thank you for having me, man. This has just been a lot of fun, so thank you.
No, I appreciate you for coming on and looking forward to reading your content as the season goes on, and hopefully at some stage throughout the season might get you back on here as well to talk some more Warriors Suns. Appreciate it.
Oh, look, when they're both fighting for the play-in, we can have a chat about it where it all went wrong.
Jeez, that'd be an absolute disaster.
It'd be terrible.
No worries. Thanks, mate.
See you later, man.